Ask me what artist I'm playing at any given moment. My next guest would be one of those artists. He's been on my podcast twice before, and he is the definition of what an artist is. This is weird because the last two interviews we've done have been in a park, so now we're actually in a studio. So who knows what's going to happen. He's just released his new album with Pete Rock, Retropolitan. He's Skyzoo, and I'm welcome back to the library, Tim Einenkel. Thank you for being here again.
What's up, man? How you doing?
Yeah, good,
both of those interviews was in both of those parks was in my neighborhood.
Yes,
I remember
exactly,
both parks that I took you to. Yeah, absolutely.
Second interview was with Apollo, and it was good.
Absolutely.
So we're 1 year removed from your last album, In Celebration of Us, which featured producers such as Apollo Brown, Avenue Productions, Illmind, and much more.
People, yeah.
Can you talk about the mindset going into this album, Retropolitan, that's produced by, obviously, the legendary Pete Rock?
Yeah, the mindset was, you know what Pete brings to the table. You know, his sound, his style, his greatness, his aura, everything that he does, you know what he brings. So conceptually, you're building around that ahead of time. So even before I picked any beats, conceptually what I wanted to do, I was already kind of building an idea and an identity for this album, because I knew who I was about to get in the studio with. And that was before I even picked the beat. You know what I mean? Because I knew what was coming with that. You go to a restaurant, and it's a soul food restaurant, you know what you're getting. So you're already thinking about what you want to eat before you walk in the restaurant, because you know that's where you're going. So it's the same thing, you know?
How did this, I mean, it's incredible, I think, to fans that this collaboration has actually happened.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, a great artist, a great lyricist, and a great producer. How did this collaboration happen? Like, who reached out to whom? What was that call like?
Well, Pete and I had been, cool through the industry, for years now. I mean, I think the first time I met Pete might have been like 07, 08 when I was young and getting into it. And we talked about working and sending beats and doing stuff. But, the moment didn't happen. We had a couple moments where it almost happened and we recorded and got things together. But the moment obviously didn't happen where there was anything that really, really was out, with just him and I. But obviously, I grew up on him, fan the whole deal, and he was a fan of mine and respected my work and what I was doing and my pen, and always showed a lot of love when I would see him in the street and catch up on the text. Long story short, it was actually Mike at Mellow Music Group.
Oh, no. Oh, wow, yeah.
It was his idea. So, again, I give you the backdrop with knowing Pete for a while, because it's not like it was just take this guy and take this guy, and it wasn't that. Like, we knew each other and was rocking, and we was fans of each other, and it was love, and it was all that. We just hadn't gotten together on this level yet, And I do a lot of work with Mellow Music Group, and it was Mike. It was Mike's idea. We're talking about producers and who to work with. And I knew after In Celebration of Us, I wanted my next joint to be one producer, like a one-on-one. I like to go back and forth. I don't want to do album. I like to go album, collabo album, big mixtape, So I knew it had to be one producer. And Mike was like, yo, what's up with Pete? And I was like, yo, of course. I didn't even think about it. And, we hit Pete, and Pete was like, absolutely. You know what I mean? Like, absolutely, we're overdue. And then that's kind of how it all came together.
Oh, before we get into the album, obviously, you said you're a fan of Pete's work. What was that first track that, do you remember that first track you heard by Pete that kind of...
Oh, back in the day? Troy. Definitely Troy. And I think I might have been 11 or something like that. 10, 11 years old. Troy, for sure.
Is that an album? Is that like a track that you've always wanted to like spit on, or is it? Like,
yeah. Beats like that, and Down with the King remix, and House of Pain remix, and obviously The World Is Yours. I always say is the greatest beat of all time. I've said it on record. I say it every night on tour at my show. It's a part of my show where I talk about it's the greatest beat of all time. I've told Pete, in the studio with him. Yeah, so all those beats. I mean, he's who he is, man. He's GOAT. Man.
Back to the album. Retropolitan is a love letter and a kind of a wake-up call for New York City.
Yeah.
You live in Atlanta now.
Yeah.
How is your perception of kind of New York changed since you've moved away from it?
That was the beauty with making this album, with the concept, because everything I'm saying is like, all the things I'm talking about are part of why I was like, yeah, I'm going to make a move. And it would never take anything away from me being in New York. I mean, I could be away from New York for 100 years. There's no way somebody who's not from the city is going to be more New York than me. I don't care what. Like, somebody from out of town can move to New York right now and live there till they're 80. You still won't be more New York than me. You know what I mean? Like, I am a New Yorker, 1,000%. You know what I mean? So I could live anywhere in the world. I'm a New Yorker,
right.
But putting this album together and a lot of the things I speak about with gentrification and the changing of the city and the culture and really about the city, me leaving is a testament to it. It's like everything I'm saying is like, see, here's why. You know what I mean? It's a testament to it. But I'm still here all the time. I'm here now, obviously. I'm here every couple weeks, you know, work stuff, family stuff, whatever. But yeah, I was just able to do the things I wanted to do family-wise in Atlanta, you know? And I never really announced it like that. But yeah, I was able to do the things that I wanted to do family-wise in Atlanta.
Do you think if you stayed and recorded this album, it would be a different sound to it?
No, because I recorded it in New York.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? It's not like he emailed me beats and I did it in Atlanta. I came to New York for 2 weeks and did it. You know, we did the whole album in 2 weeks. If you know me, this is quick. Right. You know, I do this very quickly. So we did the whole, I think it was about 12 days because we had 2 off days. I think we did the whole album in 12 days. So.
The first track on the album, Glorious, starts with an interview with, I think, Miles Davis. Mm-hmm. And you have Mr. Davis essentially saying that there are books written about him, they're all wrong.
Right.
And he's going to write his story.
Right. And appreciation and all that type of stuff, yeah.
Is that, what has been the biggest, I guess, untruth or told about you and your career that kind of makes you want to be like, all right, I'm Skyzoo, I'm going to write my story?
I don't know if it's an untruth, but an unspoken truth, I would say. You know, I mean, I feel like my name is synonymous with underrated because I've heard that more than anything in my entire career. From 2006 on, the word underrated was like attached to me. It's like if it's tattooed on me. You know what I mean? I think it's been about people getting it, knowing they'll get it later, because there's stuff I've done years ago that people get now. Like this stuff, you know, this year is the 10-year anniversary of The Salvation, ironically. So, you know, my debut joint, 10 years. And there's people who still talk about things that they're getting off that album now. And that was 10 years ago. So knowing that the clock has to tick, like, yeah, what I'm doing, oh, you heard it, you got it. I promise you didn't really get it. You know, there's people I know personally that get it where they'll break it down to me and I'll be like, wow, you got it. Like right away.
Right.
You know, there's a dude in Australia. He's a huge fan and supporter. And he would always tweet me. And it got to the point where when I was in Australia, I was on tour and we got cool. He came to show and we got cool and stuff, you know, to where I take my email and like he'll hit me and he always gets it. I don't know how, but he always gets it. Everything I'm talking about, all these triple entendres, he breaks it down and he's like, yo, you're the greatest, man. And here's why, because you said this and this and it meant that. And I'm like, yo, you got it. Like, you know what I mean? Like, how did you, really? All right, word, you know, so that's awesome. So it's the underrated thing, but I'm cool. I'm okay with that, you know, because the ones who get it, they get it, you know. And like Pete, when we was making this, he was like, dude, like, he was like, yo, you're one of the greats, bro. Like, listening to this thing, he was like, you're one of the greats, man. Like, you know what I mean? Yeah. Like, if they didn't understand before, they gonna understand now, you know. And I did that in 12 days. That's you know crazy. What I mean? So that's just a part of the blessing, I guess. You know, I don't take it lightly.
You spit, doctor said I couldn't make Miles until I made Miles.
Yep.
What has been Miles Davis's impact on your career or on you as an artist?
Oh, that line was about my son.
You said his name Miles?
Yeah.
Things I don't know.
Yeah. That line was about my son. I named my son after Miles Davis. That line was about my son. When I said, doctor said I couldn't make Miles until I made Miles. That was just giving people...
Not the guy in Australia.
Right. That was just some super personal information, which people are going to ask now that when the album's out. I was told by doctors that I wouldn't be able to have kids. You know, trying to have a kid, you know, with my lady, with my wife, I was told I wouldn't be able to have kids. You know, the doctor did a million tests and it was like, it's not going to happen. Like, you guys should look into adoption. IVF, all that type of stuff. We did all that. And it was like, it's not going to happen. Wow. And then it happened on its own. You know what I mean? No IVF, no IUI, no nothing. It happened on its own. Wow. So it was all God. You know what I mean? Like, so that was why I said doctor said I couldn't make Miles until I made Miles, you know. So that was all.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, but back to Miles Davis. Miles Davis is my favorite artist of all time in any genre of music. Him and John Coltrane. I named my son Miles after him. I listen to Miles Davis every single day, 365 days a year. Yeah, I'm a Miles Davis stan, connoisseur, super duper fan. Like, I mean, I'm a jazz head. If you know me, I'm a jazz head. And Miles is my guy. Along with, I could rattle off a million names: Lee Morgan, Wayne Shorter, the Deloney's Mug. We can go on and on and on. Stanley Turrentine, we can go on and on, but Miles Davis is my guy.
The track Carry the Tradition, featuring Styles P.
Yep.
I'm not going to demolish your lyrics, but so I apologize. But
you're good.
You
be getting it too. When we do the interviews, you be getting it.
Sometimes.
You be saying stuff, you be getting it.
I fake it. I fake it really well. So you said, my aura been the same as you thought, like who you think for an era when you turn up the nerve to loot it brings. Then you talk about Miles Davis again. Or you reference Miles again. So there's another Miles reference. Which, and you explain why, obviously the impact Miles has had in your career and you as an artist. Can you just break down this kind of these lyrics for us and referencing Cuban links?
So my aura been the same as you thought, like who you think, from an era where you turn up the nerve, the looter brinks. So right there, I'm just saying, like, my aura is just as you thought it would be if you know all of my other music and you heard all my other music. Like, I haven't changed. Like, my aura been the same as you thought. Like, who you think? Like, who'd you think I was? I'm exactly who you thought I was based on the music you know of me. And I'm from an era where you turn up the nerve, the loot a Brinks, meaning like you get the courage to do something so wild, like loot a Brinks truck, like which means sticking up a Brinks truck. Right. Like from an era where you had that type of courage to go get it. So I'm really just talking about an era and a time frame where you just went out and got it. Like, yo, I'm here to get it. You know what I mean? Like whatever it takes. And it was no holds barred. So I'm just saying I'm from that era, back when it was word for word with Cuban links, back when it was, you could recite that whole album word for word. So I'm really just painting a picture of an era.
All right.
95, 96. I'm really just painting a picture of an era with that whole 4-bar stanza. Back when it was word for word with Cuban links, and I became Miles Davis meets whoever style Ray, and I decoded how to say it, and I just keep going. So what I'm saying, the impact that album that Cuban links had on me and the whole generation in the era, you start dressing like Ray, you start wearing a bunch of low and all that. But I'm saying I'm still Miles Davis, but also on my Ray vibe. So I'm just putting those two energies together. Like I'm into this and I'm into that. Mm-hmm. And as a kid, I was into this and into that. So that's all I was saying in that 4-bar package right there.
Why did you go back? I mean, for this album, why go back to that era?
I always do. All my music, I always do. You know what I mean? My next project, I'm going to be talking about that. That's just my thing. You got some guys, all they talk about is how much money and jewelry they got and how much coke they got rid of, and that's cool. Yeah. You got some guys, all they talk about is, man, I wish it was, 89 and we would still break that. That's cool. You got some guys, all they talk about is, power to the people, which I love. That's cool. You got some guys, all they talk about is chicks. That's cool. I talk about my neighborhood, how people from outside of my neighborhood relate to it or understand it or find themselves in it. My music's always been a big sociology project. It's always been a sociology course. And so, yeah, I always talk about that era. I always talk about the era that raised me and the similarities and differences and changes and things that stayed the same and why, and the people moving in and the people that moved out and the changing of the culture and how it affects us, and how if you live here and you live here and you have your father and you don't have your father and you have your mother and you don't, and how those things shape us as a people in this country and in this culture.
The track Truck Jewels features Pete Rock because he spits in the last verse. But a verse that really is powerful for me is the second verse of that, which with visions be everything until it's out of reach. That verse.
Okay, yeah.
And words or names that really stand out to me as well. You mentioned Common, you mentioned Huey, you mentioned Eric Gardner. You say spaying rounds at your goat until your view gets bigger. Can you just kind of break down the importance of the names I mentioned, Common, Huey, and Eric Gardner, but then also that line, spraying rounds at your goat until your view gets bigger? Kind of break all that.
Yeah, that when I wrote that out, sometimes when you write, so like as an artist, anything you put out, you're supposed to be happy with it, right? So you like everything you put out. That's the way it should be, or else you shouldn't put it out. But sometimes as an artist, or even as a producer, you'll have those moments where you're like, ooh, like that, that was one. Like, so that line, that little pocket right there, those like 4 bars that you're talking about, spraying rounds at your goat until your view get bigger, same rounds that was loaded in a Huey picture. When I was penning that, I was excited. I was like, ooh, that can't, hell yeah, like pen moving, you know what I mean? Like pen was really moving on that. That's some of my favorite lines on the album. That second verse, like you said, that's some of my favorite work on this album. And yeah, you know, spraying rounds at your GOAT until your view get bigger. Whoever you think is the GOAT and whoever's your favorite, I'm trying to give you a bigger perspective of what to look at and consider to be your favorite. Like,
I got that. See, I knew that.
there you go.
I knew that was
Yeah,
the right way.
yeah, absolutely.
I was
You know what I mean? Like, I'm saying,
like,
like,
he's not talking about the animal.
no, no. So yeah, I'm like, you know, spraying rounds at your GOAT until your view get bigger. Like, and it's not about one particular artist who you may think is a GOAT. Nah, whoever, as a listener, if you listening, whoever you think is the GOAT, I'm killing him to make sure you got a better view of what else is out here. Like, dad, you know what? Skyzoo could be my GOAT. But my view wasn't big enough to even pay attention to that because I'm so focused on this, which is in front of me every day in the mainstream, or I'm focused on this because I'm told this is supposed to be the greatest of all time, or whatever it may be.
Yeah.
Insert any artist right there, whoever, and that's just me bragging, just talking. But you know, then I bring it back around with the whole same rounds that was loaded in the Huey picture, like Huey Newton on the chair, boom, boom, with you know what I mean, same rounds that. So it's you know, and then it keeps going, and you know, yeah.
But Eric Gardner, I mean, if you talk about Eric Gardner.
Yeah, absolutely. One of my very close childhood friends who I've known since I was like 11, went to multiple schools together. He from Brooklyn. That's his cousin.
Oh, wow.
You know what I mean? Yeah. So we talk about Eric Garner a lot. Rest in peace. My man Foof, that's his cousin and all that. But yeah, I mean, regardless of the sort of connection to him that my friend is, you know, close cousin to him, I mean, that's something that impacted and affected everyone. You know, we're dealing with the aftermath of what happened with the police officer and all that nonsense. And, you know, that's something that impacted everyone. So I just wanted to touch light on it. You know, the heart of Eric Garner. Like, I just want to show a little love. You know what I mean? So I'm talking about me as an artist and me as a man and what I do, you know, sparring out of Sparta. You know what I mean? Like, if I'm in the ring or whatever it is, if we there and we sparring on this mic, again, I'm just talking. That record is me just kind of getting busy. You know, there's moments in there where there's jewels dropped here and there, but that's just one of them we getting busy records, you know what I mean? And, you know, sparring out of Sparta, obviously Sparta, 300, whatever. The heart of Eric Garner, you know, I'm just saying, like, having that much heart to be a stand-up individual and do whatever for your family, stand on two, solid, 10 toes down, and God forbid something like that happens, but, you know, taking on the world, you know, if need be, you know, and that. So that was what I'm talking about, the heart of Eric Garner.
Do you ever, speaking of Eric Garner and actually what's happening in the climate now, the political climate, do you ever feel the pressure that you need to, as an artist, you need to speak out more politically? I mean, do you?
Yeah, I drop it in records. Again, a lot of it is tucked, but I drop it, and a lot of In Celebration of Us was about all that. Right. You know, like even on a record like, you know, Crown Holder, where I said, you know, I talked about Kaepernick. You know what I mean? So if I'm seated, I'm Kaepernick. You know, if I'm still seated, I'm Kaepernick. Like, oh man, I'm drawing a super blank because we're talking about this album. But Black Sambo, the whole song is about police brutality.
Right.
You know what I mean? So like, I do get into it for sure, but I've never been the preach guy where, you know, and I love some of the, I hate to use the word preach, but I love some of the music that really just directly just boom, that's what you're going for. I love that. I grew up on some of that stuff, you know what I mean? But I've never been the guy to approach it from that angle. My approach has always been storytelling in the sense of how those moments affect someone like me from this neighborhood where all you know is this neighborhood, but your view is bigger because of having both of your parents in your life. So there's this duality and dichotomy in there, and if that makes sense, and a lot of those different things that come together and keep apart. So I've always talked about politics and things like that within that. You know, it's always been kind of woven through in a certain way.
Do you see yourself with Trump being the president he is? Do you see yourself kind of weaving more?
Yeah, if it calls, you know, if the story I'm writing is that, because for me, I mean, obviously he's a horrible human being, and this is all a mess, and this is something that this country should be embarrassed about right now and will be embarrassed about later when, if you're talking, you know, 40, 50, 60 years from now in the history books, you're going to be like, dang, that happened?
Yeah.
Like, that's where we are. Like, that's what it's going to be. For me, like I said, the storytelling that I do is about this certain thing and how these things change us and made us, and whether he was around or not. And then him being around just intensifies it and makes it even worse on so many levels. And the scary part is, you know, when you have a child, you know, like when it's just you feel invincible, like you know what's going on, and you know the reality of it and the impact that it can have and that it does have, but you're only worrying about yourself. And you're like, I'm good, I could take care of myself. And the moment you have a seed, it's like, yo, like everything changes because you want to protect them from every single thing. Like I wish I could be around my son until he's like 80, like everywhere he goes, just to make sure he's all right. But obviously that's not going to happen. And it makes me ask my parents, like I asked my pops, like, how did it feel like letting me walk out the door to go do whatever? Like I was outside running around. Like you hear it in my music. You know what I mean? I grew up, both parents, you know, had everything I wanted in life, but, you know, we still lived in certain neighborhoods and my friends still did X, Y, Z, and I was in the mix. And like, I grew up like going outside every single day. Like, and all the things I talk about is from that. And I'm like, how did you feel like being okay with me walking out the door? Like, you know, I'm so worried. And my parents are like, yeah, we were worried too, but we knew you had to grow up and turn into a man. So go ahead, go outside. Go ahead, you know, just be back in the house by such and such time. You know what I mean? And make it home. The whole thing was make it home safe. Whatever you do, make sure you make it home, you know? And I'm just like, wow, man, like, I don't know if I'm ready for that. I mean, good thing he's only a year and a half. I don't know if I'm ready for that. You know what I mean?
You're
like,
not walking outside yet.
Right. I'm not ready to go ahead. Like, I'm not yet, you know?
No, it's true. I mean, I grew up in Washington Heights in the 80s. My parents let me walk around the house,
nuts.
walk outside by myself and back in.
The Heights in the 80s, forget it.
The only way that like we were safe is that when we would go make our whatever we were going to a friend's house, and we would call back. So it's before cell phones, obviously.
Right.
And we would let the phone ring 3 times and then hang up. I'm like, how is that a system that works?
That's
like,
crazy.
Now I'm just like helicopter parent. Like,
Right. No, it was crazy, man. It was a lot of faith. Parents just had a lot of faith in everything working out.
Yes,
you know what I'm saying? Like,
going back to the track, Pete Rock spits on the track as well. He doesn't spit much, but when he does, he's good.
It's awesome. It's awesome.
Was there something that surprised you about his rhyming ability that you just didn't like?
Not surprised me because he's sprinkled verses all throughout his career. You know, Soul Survivor and all those different things. He's sprinkled all throughout his career, man. The verse was super dope. You know, when he did it, I was like, damn, Pete got off. You know what I mean? Like, I loved what he did. I told him ahead of time, I was like, day one in the studio, I was like, bro, got to get you on the album for sure. I don't know what record yet, but you got to do a verse. And he was like, hell yeah. He's like, yeah, I'll do a verse. Hell yeah. We got to do that. And then, he knocked it out. And his verse is crazy. I love his verse.
What did you, by putting him on this track, what did you want him to add to it? Or what does he add to it?
The beat sounded like such a Pete Rock beat because if you know Pete, he loves soul, obviously. He loves 70s blaxploitation movies. Like, he loves that stuff. And I love all of it, too. Obviously, he was there for it. To see those movies. I had to see them later on videotape. But he loves those types of movies. And that beat sounded like that. Dun, 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 dun. It sounded like Shaft or, Cotton Come to Heart. Like, it sounded like one of those. So I was like, if he gonna be on a joint, it gotta be this one. You know what I mean? Like, yeah.
The beat for It's All Good, which is the single that came out, you wrote on Instagram. You talked about it was created, or Pete told you it was created during kind of the Illmatic
in 94,
sessions.
Yep.
Once you heard that, once someone says to you, obviously, I created this beat that was while I was working on one of the greatest albums.
Right.
What does that do to you as an artist? Like, where does that what does your creative process, like, does it go somewhere else because there's this kind of quote unquote pressure of 94?
It didn't for me on that because I knew I wanted the beat before he told me when he made it.
Oh, okay. Nice.
Because when he pressed play, for me, I'm the type of artist, like, I could tell in the first 10 seconds if I want the beat. Like, I can't really be sold on a beat. It's not like I'm listening, like, yeah, that's not bad. You know what? Yeah, let's do it. I'm not that artist. I know right away. I'm like, oh, that's a keeper. Like, oh, yeah, I want that. I know in 10 seconds. So when I heard it, as soon as it came in, I was like, yo, that's a keeper. Right. I was like, that's happening. You know what I mean? And I knew it would be the single because I knew what people wanted from Pete and I when they saw our names together. I was like, when people find out this is happening, the first thing I want them to hear is what they came for. Like, if you go to a restaurant and you're expecting this and you don't get it, it's like, huh?
Yeah.
If you go to a restaurant and it's exactly what you expected, you're like, absolutely. You know what I mean? It was a wonderful experience. So I wanted the first thing people heard to be exactly what they expected when they saw my name and his name together on the card. And so when I heard the beat, it said that.
Right.
I was like, oh, that's that. So I was like, that's going to be the single within 15 seconds. And then he told me what was up. And I knew it was older because it came from the SP. And I was like, yo, we got to pull the SP out, bro. Like, I know that's you doing that right now. You know, dropping a lot of SP stuff. I got to get some SP stuff on this. He was like, yeah, of course. So he's loading up. He pressed play. And so I knew it was old because of the SP, but I didn't know when it was, you know, what the whole story was. And after I picked it, he told me, he was like, yo, you know, the thing about that beat is I made it in 94. Then he starts to, and I was like, yo, that's wild. But it didn't make me say, yo, I got to go even harder now.
Right.
Like, nah, I'm going to go just as hard regardless. You know what I mean? But it was just cool to know that it came from 25 years ago with that energy, but sounds like it was made yesterday.
Right, timeless.
And that's the best thing about it. It doesn't sound like, oh, yeah, it ain't hot now. It would be hot back then. No, it's like, yo, that beat is nuts. And that's just a little bonus on top.
But when you're writing, are you writing, do you have the song concept in your mind prior to getting the beat, or do you wait for the beat and then you kind of get that?
No, I usually have ideas ahead of time. Sometimes, well, the beat always speaks to me. But the beat always tells me what to do. But I'll have concepts. I never write ahead of time. I write to the beat. I don't sit and write at home and find a beat for it later, like ever. Everything is on the spot, in the studio. You can send me beats right now. If my session is next week, I may listen to the beats and be like, yo, these are dope. I'm going to do that. I'm going to do that. But I'm not thinking about writing a single line until I'm in the studio, and then I go. But I'll have concepts. I'll have ideas. This album was a little more loose as far as walking in with ideas. I knew kind of where I wanted to go because, like I said in the beginning, it was Pete. But it was a kind of a blank canvas outside of that element. It was kind of a blank canvas once it all just started coming together. Certain ideas, like I had the idea for Richie. I had the idea for 10 Days, Eastern Conference. Other than that, it was like a blank canvas. I just knew the mode and the zone I wanted to be in and the vibe that I wanted the album to be because it was me and Pete. But it was a blank canvas.
I want to go back to just talk about the Illmatic and just trying to think of like you as an artist. If you know, Illmatic, obviously arguably one of the greatest albums
Absolutely.
of all time.
Without a question.
And you kind of answered it earlier because you said your favorite, or you think the best beat of the album is
Best beat in the world.
Best beat in the world. But if you were a fly on the wall during this session and you got to see the creation of two tracks, which would those two tracks be?
Oh, if you could pick?
Just the whole process.
If you said like, oh, fly on the wall, you could pick two tracks to watch the creative process of.
It doesn't necessarily just have to be the beat. It also could be like
right, the whole thing.
Yeah.
I'm thinking more along those lines. Richie and probably One Time. Yeah, Richie and One Time. Richie's the first record I did on the album.
Right.
You know, like when I record, I don't really do it in order. I'll have the story in my head and I'll know, okay, track one, I want to do this, track two, that. I'll have everything kind of mapped out in my head as far as concepts and stuff normally. But it doesn't mean today we're going to do track one, tomorrow we're going to do track. It just depends on what mood I'm in that day or what beat I want to write to. So Richie was the first record I wrote and recorded for the album, and that's like track 8, I think, 7 or 8, something like that. But that was the first record I recorded for the album. One of my favorite records on the album. It's just loaded with the story and what I'm talking about. And obviously it's a play on the track before it, which is 10 Days. Like those two go hand in hand. It's like part one of the story and part two of the story. But yeah, Richie's one of my favorite records on the album.
Going to Penny Jerseys.
Another one of my absolute favorite records on the album.
Amazing, great track.
Thank you.
Obviously, a reference
because of what I'm talking about.
Yes.
Like, you know what I mean? That's why it's one of my personal favorites.
It's a reference to the Penny Hardaway.
Absolutely.
I was a huge Tim Hardaway fan. So
okay.
The Hardaway track line. But that being said, what's the importance of like why Penny Hardaway to you?
For me, Penny was my favorite player growing up. You know, I'm a diehard Knicks fan, but when you're a kid, you follow the player. So I followed the Knicks, of course, because that was in my blood. But as a player, I was all about Penny and Magic jerseys and USA jerseys and the Penny sneakers, the Penny hat, play ball like Penny. I'm right-handed, but I would come up with the left, put the wristband right here. I'll come up with the left, and then I'll cross, and then I'll throw it that. Everything was Penny for me growing up, like a lot of people. But bigger than that, Penny represents a generation, and it represents an era. So that's why I always reference Penny and stuff. Like I was working on some music today, and I threw a little bit of Penny in there. Like Penny represents a generation and an era. It represents a time. You know what I mean? It's like how Magic represented a certain time, Jordan represented a certain Penny. LeBron's going to represent a certain time. With Penny represents an era, and it may have been this big. It may have been like a 4-year span, but that era was unstoppable. You're talking 94, 95, 96. You're talking that era was unstoppable. You know what I mean? 93, 94, 5, 6. Some of the greatest years in life. Forget hip hop.
Right.
In life. Just everything from movies, music, what was going on in the world, fashion. Nothing's better than 95. You know what I mean? Like 94, 95. Those years, I'd pay good money to go back to from 94 to 96. Good money to go back right now. You know what I mean? So Penny represents an era. And he ran the world at that point. You know, if you was in the hood, you was pennied out.
Right. Yeah.
And maybe even if you wasn't in the hood, if you was in the burbs or whatever, it obviously was that way too because he was a huge superstar. But in the hood, Penny ran it. Everything was Penny. And that's why I talk about on that record, my whole block was in Penny jerseys. You know what I mean? Like, so I had mine. I was one of the first ones like I talk about on the record. But then before you knew it, everybody had a Penny jersey. Everybody had Penny ones. Like, that was it. You know what I mean? Like, you don't got no Penny? What? Like, he had the hardest sneakers out. What do you mean you don't got no pennies? Are you crazy? Like, that was what it was, you know?
At the end of the record, you have Magic Johnson
commentating. With the skit, yeah.
And one thing that stands out, he says he's talk about someone that can do it all. Are you referencing you as an artist as someone that could do it all? Like are you the Penny Hardaway of hip hop or more of the generation of?
Yeah, I wouldn't say the Penny Hardaway of hip hop only because, he didn't get to rock as long as he wanted to, as amazing as he was. He didn't get to rock as long as he didn't get what he deserved career wise and as far as all that, because he really, I mean, the respect is still through the roof on him, but he really was a different guy. So I wouldn't say that, the Penny of rap, but doing it all, yeah, absolutely, doing it all, 100%. That's just something as an artist you're supposed to feel that way about yourself. I would hope so. You know what I mean?
Eastern Conference All-Stars features Westside Gunn, Conway, Benny the Butcher.
That was
another incredible track.
Thank you.
3 of those guys, Buffalo, New York MCs. What do you think's in the water in Buffalo that is kind of creating this powerhouse of MCs?
The thing about those guys, and Buff is an awesome city, and they got a lot going on. Those guys are family. Like Benny's West cousin, you know what I mean? Like those guys are family, you know what I mean? They've known each other since they was like 5, like you know what I mean? So it's just something that was long overdue and that was coming. But Buffalo as a city, like they're rocking. A lot of times some of the best art comes from situations that needs art to represent it because of what they're going through. And if Buffalo's for real. Buffalo, you think upstate, so it's upstate. Nah, Buffalo's for real. Yeah. Like Buffalo's East New York. You know what I mean? Buffalo's for real, And so a lot of times some of the best art comes from those types of situations of, undeserved despair. That city don't deserve that. No city deserves that. But a lot of times some of the best work comes from that because you just need an outlet and you're able to create and you see things a certain way. So I love what they're doing, man. That's my fam. That's literally like my family, like I'm with Wes almost every day. You know what I mean? Like, if I'm home, I'm at his crib, he at my crib, like that's fam. Conway is fam. Benny, Darren, those guys is fam. You know what I mean? Like 150%. So I just love seeing it.
How did the track come together with those 4 guys? But also, like, Eastern Conference All-Stars means it's a lot of pressure to
right.
You're like, all right, who's going to be these? These 4.
I just had the idea of like a super posse cut, and I was like, yo, it'd be dope to have a huge posse cut. I don't think I've ever had a huge posse cut on my records outside of myself and my brother Torre with Sean Price and Guilty Simpson, on Barrel Brothers. That was an awesome, huge posse cut. But I was like, yeah, like, a nice, crazy posse cut would be dope. which is head spitting. You know, with this type of album, Pete, that's something people would like. Yo, Pete Rock Skyzoo, oh snap, everybody going crazy. So when I thought of it, I was like, yo, what if it was like 5 of us? I had to settle on a number, and I was like, what if it was 5 of us? And that's where the Eastern Conference, starting 5, Eastern Conference also. That's cool. We're all from the East Coast. You know, Elzai's Midwest, but if you look at it in sports, Detroit, so that's all East. I was like, that's dope. And you know me, I always come up with my titles first. So I'll have a bunch of song titles written out in my phone, and I had Eastern Conference All. I was like, that's just a dope title. You know what I mean? You get 5 of us on a record, and boom, 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 it just came together, and it rocked. We did it all over email. You know, we all emailed it to one another. I actually engineered Wes' session. So, like, I recorded Wes because he had the setup in his crib, and he never engineered handy. So I ran the session when he recorded his verse. So that was cool. But because I'm a pretend engineer, I don't really know what I'm doing. But I did good enough to get the verse done, and it came out dope. But yeah, we did it all via email. But it was, you know, I hit everybody ahead of time. Like, so here's everyone who's going to be on the record, just so everybody's in the clear. And we had obviously those guys are fam, and then Elzai, they had all worked with Elzai before, so it was a layup. It wasn't gonna be any type of reservation. Everybody is fam, and everybody rocks with each other. And I just let everybody know, yo, so the record is me, you, him. All right, word, yeah, that's gonna be nuts. I got you. Let's do it. And you know, everybody started emailing their verses in and all that.
How'd you pick order?
I knew Wes would end it with the way he ended it. I knew I was gonna start it because I just sent it, the way I sent it off, it was my verse, and I sent it to everybody to kind of follow the lead. And then after that, it kind of was just what made sense, just playing with it a little bit, and what made sense. You know, if you know Benny, for instance, like Benny don't really do 16. You know, like Benny goes. He just writes until he doesn't feel like writing anymore. So like we all did 16, Benny's verse is 24. You know, like that's just how he rhymes. If you listen to his albums, they'll just go off for like 100. And then boom, I'm done. You know, and that's awesome. That's hip hop. You know what I mean? So it was a part of that. Okay, so I'm here. Let's put Benny here because his verse is 24. Khan come back in with 16. It was kind of that thing. I knew I was started. I knew Wes would end it because of the way Wes ended his verse. I was like, that'd be dope to close it out. And everything else kind of just flew in there organically.
The last track, Audacity or Dope.
Yeah.
Great title.
Thank you. That actually, I got to give credit where it's due. My man DJ Hyphen in Seattle, he had a radio show called The Audacity of Dope years ago. And it was like an underground radio show. He's one of the first people to play my record all the way in Seattle. And his radio show was called The Audacity of Dope. And I always just thought it was a cool title, a cool name. And when I was working on that record, you know, it's one of those records where there's no hook. It's just me going off for like, you know, I don't know, 60-something bars, whatever it is, going off for a long time. And I was like, yeah, that'd be a dope title. You know what I mean? So that's, shout out to DJ Hyphen. That totally is something he created a while ago. Yeah.
Why leave us with that? Like just straight, no hook?
I like doing that. You know, my intros are usually one verse. A lot of my albums, the intro is just one long verse. I just had a lot to say. When I heard the beat and what it's saying, you know, the sample, I got my eye on you, it's true. And that's why I started all 3 of them. All being one and the same is all I need from it. Because the sample says, I got my eye on you, is true. Right. So I'm saying, yeah, I got my eye on you, all 3, 1, 2, 3. You know what I mean? So, and people may not catch that because the sample, they're not thinking about what the sample is saying, but that's why I started it the way I did. I just had a lot to say. I knew that beat would end the album. I liked the way it sounded. I was like, this would be the perfect beat sonically to close the album out with. And I just went off. It ain't sound like a beat that needed structure. Verse, hook, outro, bridge. It didn't sound like it needed any type of structure. It just was... The beat was just boom, 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 and it was like, yo, just go off. And I just had a lot to say.
Is there if you looking back at the album and everything you've written, is there a lyric or maybe a verse that kind of one represents the album best to you, but 2 is that it's kind of that verse that you are still blown away that you've written? Because for me, it's every song.
Thank you, man. That's why we sitting here. I appreciate people who think like you do. I like One Time a lot. I mean, I love all the records. One Time, you know, one time we was being followed by 12, quoting Ready to Die, so we was probably 12. Boys pulled us over like we had product to sell. A week later, my man was popping with krills. He said, if they already assume I'm trying to deal, then why not though? Custy said, arigato. I had 116s written by how my block go. At 16, I needed room, so I forgot those. And it just keeps going, fast forward 20 more. And where the top go is where that sit me. Word to who, and it just keeps going. That's some of my favorite work. I mean, because like all my music, all that stuff really happened. You know what I mean? So like, you know me, that's the neighborhood I'm from, Biggie, St. James, the whole deal. And all you listened to was Ready to Die when it came out, because that was the neighborhood. Right. Like, that album is about my neighborhood. How you don't rock with? Of course you rock with that. It was blasphemy not to. So, quoting Ready to Die. So we was some kind of. It's like if I'm having a conversation with you and I'm recalling the story. One time we was being followed by 12, quoting Ready to Die. So we was probably 12. The boys pulled us over like we had product for sale, and I'm just telling the story. It's like if I was conversing with you. And
it's kind of like, not to cut you off, but it's kind of like a. When Ice-T 6 a.m. tells a story, right? It's like very much like that.
Yeah, I'm just conversing. I'm just, one time we was being followed by 12, right, which is cops. Quoting Ready to Die. So we was at the time, we was walking on the block. We was singing Ready to Die. So we was probably like 12, if that's what was going. So that's how I'm telling the story. You know what I mean? And it just keeps going. And then when I said, I had 116s written by how my block go. Like when I was a kid, I had so many rhymes on deck. I just had so many rhymes, I had 116s up here because there was so much going on in my neighborhood and so much to talk about. I never ran out of things to talk. I had so much. And then it's a play on words. I had 116s, and then at 16, I needed room, so I forgot those because so much more was happening in my neighborhood. So much more was going on in life. So much more was going on outside. I needed room for more. So it's just a play on words. Like, I needed, and it's just a wow. It's one of those, like, it's one of, things that make you go, It's one of those moments.
Right, yeah.
With that, little section right there. One Time is one of my favorite records, featuring my man, my bro, Raheem Devon. I absolutely love Penny Jerseys. I love all of them, but those are some of my favorite records.
So as you mentioned, 10 years since your debut album.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of looking through your career, it's my last question. What has surprised you most about yourself as an artist? And then
what surprised me most?
How do you continue to push yourself lyrically as an artist?
Pushing myself lyrically is just me wanting to just be great. Right, and I'm my own pressure. Like I don't need pressure from so and so dropped and it's crazy. Like that's awesome, but that doesn't. Of course you hear stuff and you be like, I want to get in the studio. Not even because I gotta beat that album. Just because dope art inspires dope art. So you're like, like when Little Brother album recently dropped, I remember listening to it and just like, I want to go create because it was just so dope. So you want to go make some dope stuff. That's just how art. And really having a love and passion for what you do works, But I push myself lyrically. I want to one-up myself. I want to be better than what I did. Like Retropolitan, next joint, I want to smash that lyrically. Like that's just always, the goal is going to always be to one-up yourself. For me, that's the way I move. And then the first question, I'm sorry.
What has surprised you most?
It surprised me?
Or did you even imagine, like, you started out 10 years later, you're still going to be doing this?
No, I'm not surprised by that because, and that's not a gloat, that's because I wanted to do this my whole life. But I'm not surprised at that. The industry surprises me. Well, surprised. I'm not surprised anymore. But the industry surprised me. The business side surprised me. Things like that. But you learn those things quick. You learn all that stuff quick and you adapt. And if you don't adapt, then that's on you. You learn that stuff quickly and you adapt to it. So that stuff surprised me. I'm not surprised to still be making music because it's what I wanted to do since I was 9. Like I talked about on Celebration of Us. Like it's really what I wanted to do my whole life. So I'm not surprised by that. No.
New album just dropped.
Yeah, Retropolitan. Right now, Skyzoo, Pete Rock, Skyzoo, Retropolitan, Mellow Music Group. And I want to shout out De Las Flores. It's a clothing line based out of New York, out of LES. And the title for the album was actually inspired by them. One of their pieces they did a hoodie that said Retropolitan on it. And they gave it to me. You get product from different lines, and I know them very well. So they gave it to me, just to rock and whatever. And when I was coming up, I was putting the album together, I was thinking of album titles, and I always have album titles ahead of time, but with this one, I didn't really have a title. And I had the hoodie on one day in January and when we were making an album. I looked down, and it just said Retropolitan, and I was like, wow. I was like, well, all the things I want to talk about on this album and all of the beats that I've just picked and where I want to go, it's all about the city. It's all about back then, but now. And it's all about the city and what's wrong with the city and what's been going on and being in love with the city, but at the same time wanting to wake the city up to like realize what's going on. It just spoke volumes, you know, at Retropolitan. So I reached out to them and was like, yo, I'm about to name this album after that shirt. Like, is that cool? And they was like, yeah, absolutely. You know, full blessings. So I want to shout them out, you know, every chance I get. They've been super supportive of the project and everything that's going on. And, you know, so yeah, the title was inspired by De Las Flores. So word up.
Cool. Skyzoo, as always, it's great having you on the library with Tim Einenkel. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, man.